Hello everyone. This video is on rock mechanics and strata control. In continuation to earlier videos. Okay, as part of this video, I'm going to cover some more topics which are related to chapter 4 and part 1. This is first part of it. Okay. Before I start, let me recap what I had covered in the last previous video lecture. Like in the previous video lecture, we discussed about the methods of determination of the shear strength of rock mass, like how we can determine the shear strength of the rock mass, and what you call the different methods that we'll be using it. Like what you call the methods are single shear test, double shear test, punch shear test, and oblique shear test. Okay, these are the four methods that we'll be using to determine the shear strength of the rock specimen. Okay, apart from that, we discussed about the methods of determination of tensile strength of the specimen. Okay, as for in order to determine the tensile strength of the specimen, there are two methods. One is direct method, second one is indirect method, and it is also known as Brazilian test. So in the previous video lecture, like we discussed in detail about how to perform what we call the direct method and indirect method, or the Brazilian method. Okay. Next, we also discussed about different methods of rock mass classification. In the earlier video, like I have covered what we call the RMR, like rock mass rating. What are the factors that influences the rock mass rating? And the RMR classification. What is the based on this rating, right? How exactly the different ratings are given based on the what is the results of the RMR? How the classification is being made? That also we discussed. Then we moved on the Q system. Q is nothing but the quality. So tunnel quality index, what is the significance of it, and what are the factors that influence the Q mass classification? Okay, what are the factors that influence the quality mass classification or Q system classification, and the formula for Q system? Let me put it Q system. Okay, let me make this as just for consistency. Q system. Yep. Then we discussed about what are the factors that influences the Q system classification, and the formula to determine what you call the Q system. Like in the Q system, right? What are the index that we will be getting? It is based on several factors, like what you call RQD, joint set number, joint roughness number, joint tolerance number, joint water condition, and the stress reduction factor. So these are all the six factors that will be influencing the determination of Q system or the quality system. Okay, and how that's what the formula. The Q system classification, like based on the results that we will be getting, how exactly the different systems the rock mass is being classified. Okay, that classification also we have discussed. But as part of the previous video lecture, I did not cover the rock quality designation. So I'll be covering this and how to determine the value of RQD, and what is the classification based on the RQD. Okay, that will be discussing as part of this video lecture. Look at here. Yeah, as I said, right? As part of this video lecture, I'm going to cover RQD, rock quality designation, and the formula to determine RQD. And we will also solve like some numerical problems in computation of RQD, and what is next RQD classification. Okay, these things left out topics as part of the previous chapter. Okay, that I'll be covering as part of this video lecture. Next, I'll move on to the new chapter, that is fourth chapter as part of rock mechanics and strata control subject, which are mainly like here the major emphasis on stress measuring devices and the subsidence. So as part of stress in the first part of it, right? I'm going to cover what you call the stress measuring devices. Like what are the methods of measuring instituted stresses, and the methods using measuring induced stresses. Nothing but what are the stresses that were present in its instituted condition. Definitely they are in equilibrium condition. But due to mining activity, the stresses which are in equilibrium, they get disturbed. Okay, as a result, what happens due to redistribution of the stresses, there will be a lateral movement of the strata. So those stresses are called induced stresses. Induced stresses is nothing but Due to a mining activity, what are the stresses that got induced into the rock mass? They are called induced stresses. So those what are the methods that we'll be using? We'll discuss in that. Next, we'll discuss about the flagjack method of in situ stress measuring. Okay. Okay, and not only that, we'll be discussing few more things here. One second. Measuring the institute stresses, right? The flat jack method we'll discuss. Let me make this. We'll also discuss overcoring technique. Or stress relief method. This comes under. Okay, let me classify. Next one, hydraulic. So these three comes under the category of this. So as part of video lecture, I'll be discussing up to this part. This I'm not going to this, I'll be covering in the next video lecture. So only these two flat jack, this must be so along with RQD, I'll be discussing these three methods of measuring institute stresses that I'll be discussing as part of this video lecture. Okay, anyway, I'm not going to cover substance as part of. Let me remove this also. Yep, this is more specific. Okay, yeah, let's move on. So methods of measuring institute stresses, flat jack method of measuring institute stress, overcoring technique, a stress relief method, and the last one is what? Hydraulic fracturing method or hydraulic fracturing method. Let's see, let us discuss RQD. See, the rock RQD means what? Rock quality designation. So the measurement of RQD is purely based on the size of the core sample that we will be getting during exploration process. So let us say I'm drilling during exploration, right? Generally, for the recovery of the core, we'll be using the diamond drilling, right? So using diamond drilling, okay, the size of the core that we'll be getting is of NX size. NX is nothing but around 54 millimeters diameter. NX size, okay. And with that size, how much is what would be the length of the core without any fracture, without any fragmentation? I'll be getting in its as it is. How much is the length of the core that you will be getting? Okay, that I'll be that I'll be getting during exploration process. So based on that, I'll be will be determining the RQD value. So what exactly is RQD here? It is used to measure the behavior of the rock mass under various mining conditions. So this is one of the classification methods which basically used to analyze the behavior of the rock mass. Right? In the previous videos lecture, there are two other techniques or other methods, other rock mass classification methods that we discussed as part of previous video lecture. They are like what you call RMR, rock mass rating, and Q system, nothing but tunnel quality index or tunnel quality system. Okay, those are again the what you call the different other category of classification methods using which we can predict the behavior of the rock mass under various stress conditions or under various loading conditions. Now here, coming to the RQD, in order to measure RQD, we, as I said, right, we require the core size of NX is used. NX size, that's nothing but using diamond drilling, we'll be getting rotary diamond drilling, we'll be getting this. Okay. Now, what is the formula now? The formula used to calculate RQD is RQD in percentage is equal to Some of the core samples whose size is greater than 10 centimeter, greater than 10 centimeters. In some of the books, it is written something like, it has given something like what you call greater than or equal to 10 centimeter. So sometimes we need to include the 10 also as part of this positive side of it. Okay. So it must be what? Some of the core samples of size greater than or equal to 10 centimeters. It must be in centimeter divided by total length of core sample multiplied by 100. So this is the formula that I'll be using to what you call to determine the percentage of RQD. Okay. So let's see. So using that formula, what is the classification now? Using the formula, we'll discuss like, okay, how to calculate different problems on top of it using the formula. So then we'll discuss what is the classification. So depending on upon the what you call the based on the size of the core that is being recovered during exploration process, will be determining the RQD value. So what are the RQD percentage of RQD that we'll be getting? So okay, it's being the rock mass is being classified into following categories. Like if the RQD percentage is 90 to 100, it says it is excellent. It is if it is 95 to 90, then it says good. Then if it is 50 to 75, then it comes under the category of fail. Then if it is what 25 to 50, then it is poor. And if it is less than 25, then it comes under the category of very poor. So this is what the RQD classification. Next one. Let us solve some problems to understand that. Let me recap. Like this is what the formula is. Let me reiterate it. The formula to determine the RQD percentage is equal to sum of core samples of size greater than or equal to, it must be. Actually, in some of the books it is written like, because this is where the people get confused. Here it has given 10 centimeter. What about the 10 centimeter? If it is exactly 10 centimeter, then what it is? Do I need to reject it or do I need to include as part of this one? Yes, we need to include it. So sum of core samples of size greater than or equal to 10 centimeter divided by total length of core sample multiplied by 100. This is what the formula that I will be using like to calculate the RQD value. Look at here. Let us discuss. Let's focus on this numerical problem. The samples of core collected from a borehole of length. How much is the total borehole of length? Is how much? 1.5 meter is given below. 1.5 meter is given below. Total length is 1.5 meters. This one. Here, look at here. There are different samples in the entire length of what you call the 1.5 meter. See, initially from the bottom, right? We got it 12.5 without any breaks. Then what is it was subjected to some kind of crushing. Crushing is nothing but no core recovery. Then it is a 5 centimeter size. It is in centimeters, right? Yeah, it is in centimeters. Yes. So 5 centimeter size. And these are the pieces I got it. So these things, okay, less than what you call 10 centimeter, will be rejecting it. We won't be what you call accounting them in determination of RQD value. So here this, even though it is 10, but the size is very smaller one. And this is a 15, and this is 10. This is 7.5, which is less than 10. Okay, including 10 that I need to use it. Okay, let us see. Yeah, I've included a 10. Okay, for this purpose, let me correct this. 1 second, please. Let me correct it so that it will be useful. Okay, this is something to put it. Okay, just okay. This must be greater than or equal to. Let it come in the video. Okay, this is what it should be. Less than or equal to. This is not the correct. In this place, should come. It should replace with that. Less than or equal to. It should be greater than or equal to 10 centimeter. So including 10 centimeter. Now look at this. Let me clear it. Okay, hope you got it. I just wanted to put it in recording. Okay, let's see. Let us okay, mouse. So this is about the size, right? Okay, let us see. So here, there are this portion. If you look at, right, this is of 12.5. Yes, there is a small part of it. Even though this is 10, but there are the small pieces. We won't account them, right? Because we need a vertical sample, because here it was rock mass was subject to some kind of crushing up to some 10 centimeter length, then 15, 10, again 7.5. Okay, 12.5 again the core size length. Next, this is 10. Again, there is a some kind of crushing. Okay, this is again 5. This is 5, and this is 25. This center length is 25. Now, how to calculate? There are two aspects of it. One is the calculation of percentage of RQD. Second one is what? Calculation of core percentage of core recovery. See, in case of RQD, this is very, very important, guys. Let me repeat it. In determination of RQD, will be what you call a measuring the length of the core sample, whose size is the length of the core sample, whose size is more than or equal to 10 centimeter. Those things will be accounting. In core recovery, except this crushing portion, right? Something was not mentioned, even though it is completely of 1.5 meters. If I combine everything, because see, this is of 10 centimeter length, but it is of crushed. The diagram shows it is of crushed one. They're not taking into account, right? So we won't be taking into account. So this is, but in case of core recovery, yes, we'll be taking these things also into account, except the powdered or the crushed part of it. Those things gets eliminated while computing the core recovery. So this is what the difference. Like in case of RQD, will be what you call will be taking the samples whose size is less greater than or equal to 10 centimeter divided by total length. Total length is nothing but 1.5 meters, nothing but 150 centimeter. Here it is everything is centimeter. So this all put what you call combined together, it is around 85 by 150, which is which comes around 57%. Right? In the same way here also, the core recovery, what you call core recovery is, if I may here these things also will take into account, and if I what you call combine all of them together, it's how much it is. Some of these values are going to be how much? 125, and the total length is how much? 150. This is what the percentage of core recovery. If someone asks, like, determine the RQD as well as the percentage of core recovery, so this is how we need to determine. Okay, let us see. So RQD percentage, core samples here again the greater than or equal to. So I have included the 10 also. So whatever the samples that were, look at here, 12.5, 15, 10, 12.5, 10, 25, right? So yeah, from this side, 12.5, 15, 10, 12.5, 10, 25. Yeah, this is what it is. Divided by total length is how much? 150 centimeters. This is centimeter, this must have been centimeter, right? It was 1.5 meter. There's nothing but 150 centimeter into 100. So upon simplifying this, the value that I will be getting is how much? 56.66. Let us see in which category it comes. Because we are classified, right? 56 is nothing but the RQD value is fail. It comes under the category of fail. So that's what it is. So it is fail. Sometimes you are asked to find out what you call determine the value of RQD percentage and write its classification or under which category the particular RQD value comes. Okay, so that also like generally we might come across in the examination. So from the examination point of view, you need to remember this, and and you must know how to calculate this. Then you can easily what you call write the corresponding comment, or it comes under the category of fail. Okay, next, core recovery. This is what I just explained a few minutes back. Core recovery percentage. While determining the percentage of core recovery, we need to take all core samples into account irrespective of the size, except the portion which is not recovered. See, there are certain gaps, right? That portion got completely crushed. There's no, not even a small port, not even a small part of what you call the core length. So okay, so that is the reason it there was no core recovery in that particular portions. So that is while computing the percentage of core recovery, so the formula for this is what? All the values that we need to account, right? That we need to combine everything divided by 180 into 100. So if I join everything, right, this is what it is. Okay, sum of all these values is going to be how much? 125 divided by total length is how much? 150, because 1.5 meters into 100, which is equal to 83.3. Okay, this is how the given the rock sample values, Okay, if you are asked to calculate what is the percentage of RQD and what is the percentage of core recovery, and you might even in some cases, right, you'll be asking like under what classification, what are the value which you will be getting upon computation, under what classification it falls. So those kind of questions you might come across in the examination. Let's say this is another one. The following are the rock pieces were recovered. Rock samples were recovered. Okay, recovered from a borehole, 50 mm. These are in mm. So 105 mm, 123 mm, 68 mm, 128 mm, 320 mm, 72 mm, 161, 32, 138 mm. Find the value of RQ. So here, as he has not given the complete core length, we'll assume that there is no crushing. Only thing is small pieces we got it. Okay, if there is no crushing, so how much is the total length now? We need to add all of them. This is in mm, right? So I need to add all of them. Okay, so if I convert this one, see what is the value of RQD? The sum of core samples of size greater than or equal to 10 centimeter divided by total length of core sample multiplied by 100, right? So this is 5 centimeters, ignore it. This is 10.5, correct? Yeah, consider this. This is 12.3 centimeters, 6.8, ignore it. 12.8, yes, add it. 3, what you call? This is almost 32.0. This is 7.2, ignore it. This is 16.1 because we are converting them into centimeters. This is 3.2, we won't consider this, and this is 13.8. So what are the values which are more than or equal to 10 centimeter divided by total? Put combine all of them multiplied by 100. Okay. So if you simplify it upon substituting those values, and if you simplify it, the percentage that will be getting how much? 81.45. I believe it comes under the category of what? Good, right? Yeah, 75 to 90 is good, right? So it comes under the category of good. That's what the comment we need to write after computation. So this is about like what do you call, how to determine or how to compute the RQD. Okay, so let us move on. Next, okay, I'm starting. I'm going to start the chapter 4, which is the first part, chapter 4, first part of it. As part of this, what you call the this chapter will be covering the following topics. Okay, first part of it, right? Okay. So in this video lecture, I'll be covering what you call up to this extent. I think that's what I believe I have mentioned in the previous slides at the beginning, right? The methods of stress measurement. Okay, there are two things. One is called in situ stress measurement, induced stress measurement. So in situ means nothing but, as the term in situ is nothing but the stress that is acting on the rock specimen in its in situ or originally formed condition. That is why it is called in situ stress measurement. Induced is nothing but due to movement of strata or due to mining activity, there will be some kind of what deformation between the layers of the strata, which induces some kind of stresses. So due to lateral movement of strata, what is the stress that got induced? That is called induced stresses. Okay. Next, what are the methods that we'll be using? What you call to measure these two? The first one is method of in situ stress measurements. Under that, the flat jack method, which is the most widely used, what you call in the method of measuring the in situ stress in the field. Okay, flat jack method. It is also known as stress restoration method. Stress. This is from entrance part of this is very important. The flat jack method is also known as stress restoration method. I'll explain like why it is called as a stress restoration method while explaining this particular topic. Next one is overcore technique, or it's also known as stress relief method. And the last one is under what you call in situ stress measurement, hydraulic fracture method. Okay. Next, these things I'll be discussing as part of next video lecture. Let me remove them because this I'm not going to cover as part of this. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. Now, what is flat jack method? So the flat jack method of in situ stress measurement. It is also known as stress restoration method. So what exactly the flat jack is? The construction of flat jack. Flat jack comprised of two metal sheets. Look at this diagram. It is of either this shape or rectangular shape. Two metal sheets. placed together. These two plates sheets are placed together and welded around the periphery. Yes, its periphery will be welded like around its periphery. Okay, and a feeder tube. These are the tubes. Okay, a feeder tube inserted in the middle allows the flat jack to be pressurized, because using this, will insert the hydraulic fluid into this flat jack. So basically, it consists of two metal sheets. What exactly flat jack is? It comprises of two metal sheets placed together. These two metal sheets are placed together and they are welded around their periphery like this. Okay, and a feeder tube is inserted in the middle, allows the flat jack to be pressurized with oil or water. With oil or water, you can pressurize this one. So that's what it is. Okay, this is about what you call the device, how exactly the flat jack looks like. So the portion of it, main portion of it. Next, now what is the flat jack method? Okay, see here, the flat jack method involves the placement of two pins fixed into the face of extraction. Nothing but, let us say, let me draw a little diagram here. Yeah. Let us say this is your face of your extraction. Okay, so as it was mentioned there, like what you call, it contains like on the face there are two what you call pins were placed at certain distance. Let's say this is what you call this is portion P. Sorry. Let me call this as P. This point as Q. Okay, this is on the face, guys. This is let's say this is the face in the underground opening, and I wanted to measure the stress acting on the face. That's nothing but in situ condition, right? So that's what I wanted to measure that. Then what to do now? See here, I have taken like this also, or yeah, like what you call, generally what they will bring is, let me do one. Put it as something different. Okay, let's say this is our face, like this we have. Okay, so in this I have to choose what you call 2 points. 2 points. This is 1 point. And this is another point. Good. Okay. Next, I need to measure the distance between these 2 points. Let us say the distance between the 2 points is d. This is what I did. So far, good, right? So this is your face, and in that, I have to measure instead stresses, right? What we'll do, we need to choose 2 points, point A, point B, or point P, point Q, whatever it is. Okay, let's say, let me call this as point P. Let me call this as point Q. So this is okay, came very close, not very. This is P and this is Q. Okay, these things. So I got P and Q, and the distance between them is this. Now we need to what do you call drive a slot, small slot kind of thing, like this. Slot we need to excavate this one. Now what happens is now I have to mark 2 points P and Q on the face, and measured the distance between them very accurately, which is equal to small d. Right now I have driven a what you call a small slot between the 2 points. Okay, up to certain depth. I have drilled this one. Okay. Now what happens, right? Due to this one, right? What happens? There will be earlier it was D. It will tries to close this opening because you made a disturbance in that. Right? So it will tries to close the opening like this. Close the opening. It tries to close the opening like this. It is trying to close the opening. Okay. Now what happens, right? Earlier the distance was D. Due to what? The redistribution, right? What are the stresses that got introduced, stress that got disturbed? It will try to close this opening, and as a result, what happens? The distance between P and Q gets reduced, right? It's some delta D part, right? Let me call this as delta D. That portion gets reduced. Okay. Now what we'll be doing is we'll be inserting what you call the flat jack into this slot. Will be in the coming slide anyway. I'll be showing the diagram. Flat jack will be inserted into this slot. Now the hydraulic pressure is being applied gradually in such a way that because it is trying to close this opening, now I am trying to bring it back so that the distance between the point P and Q is same as that of the original distance. Whatever the distance that we measured, okay, it has to restore to the same distance, right? So here I keep on applying some hydraulic force kind of thing. What happens? Earlier it was reduced. Now it will come back to what you call restore back to its original position. That's nothing but the distance between P and Q is restored back to again D. Again D. So at what pressure and at what hydraulic pressure, okay, the distance between these 2 points restore back to its original measured length. That pressure is a measure of in situ stress acting on the face. That is why, since you are bringing back to what is restoration, nothing but we are restoring back by using what you call by applying the hydraulic pressure using flat jack, right? That is why this method is called stress restoration method. That's what it is. Simple. Okay. So hope it's very clear. Let's see. Let me close this. Yeah. The flat jack method involves the placement of 2 pins fixed into the face of extraction. Okay. And in earlier diagram, I have written it as P, Q, 2 pins. Those are 2 pin positions. And the distance D between the 2 pins is measured accurately. Right. A slot is cut into the rock space, rock between the pins. Or in between the pins, okay, there is some slot kind of thing which is being driven. Since the normal stresses acting on the slot are compressive in nature, the pins will move towards each other. They'll try to close that particular slotted portion, which results in reduction of distance between 2 pins. So the distance between them gets reduced. This is due to the compressive forces acting on the slot of the opening will try to close the opening. Okay. Next, the flat jack is then placed and grouted into the slot. So the flat jack is placed and it will be grouted into the slot. It will be fixed into the slot. Okay. Let's see. Okay, this is what it is, guys. So there are what you call this is slot. Let's say in this case, 4 points he has used it. Okay, 4 pins. So this is one part, 2 pins. These are again 2 pins. Means total 2 pairs of pins he has used. So this is 1, 2. So these 2, last 2, this one, right? And the distance between initial them was what, around 25 centimeter, and the second one was around 50 centimeter. Now what you call a core, a slot is being driven in between these 2 pins. Okay. Now in that the flat jack is placed. So this is a cross section of it. Look at it. If I cut it, right, this diagram indicates what section A dash, nothing but the section of this portion, this diagram, right, along A dash. If I cut it, this is how it looks. The slot is being driven up to certain depth, and there was a vertical between the flat jack and the face, right, the dead end of the whole slot, right. We need to maintain some gap, which is of around what you call some gap here. Okay, and the flat jack is inserted into the slot. Now the hydraulic pressure is being applied so that the distance between the 2 sets of pins comes back to restore back to what you call its original distance. Okay, so at what pressure, at what hydraulic pressure, the distance between the pins comes back to its original position. That's a measure of, which is a measure of the in situ stress acting on the face. So this is what exactly the basic principle of working of this one, flat jack method. Okay, hope this diagram is very clear. Right. This is how the flat jack looks like. This is a side view, and this is the vertical top view of it. If I can cross section of it is this one. This is a cross section view. Now it is being placed inside this, and the hydraulic fluid is supplied by using what the pump, by using pump, and it is this dial is giving the reading like okay, what would be the pressure of the hydraulic that is being pumped into the flat jack, so that the distance between these two pins is will be restored back to its original value, so that the reading will be taken. So this is a kind of field setup. Field setup. In the above diagram, the distance d between the two pins is measured accurately before driving a slot. So these two things have to be measured. Okay. So let's move on. Now, principle of operation. So it works based on the principle of restoration of distance between the pins with the application of hydraulic pressure. Am I right? Okay. Now, next one is field measurement. On pressurizing the flat jack, the fields will move apart. It is assumed that when the pin separation distance reaches the value it holds before the slot was cut, it has to restore back to its original value. So the hydraulic pressure exerted by the flat jack before it brings back to its original distance between the pins is a measure of in situ state of stress acting on the pins. That's what it is. So this is another diagram. Look at here. Let us say the distance between the two pins is, this is the force that is acting. Okay, distance between this is d0. Now what happens due to slot? What happens, right? The distance between these two pins gets reduced. So slotting there in the slotting, right? They applied a pressure. It gets reduced, obviously, right? So the force which get relieved because you have made a disturbance in that. So what happens? Initial distance was d0. Okay. Now what happens? It has due to the slotting, there will be reducing this one, right? So d0 minus 2 times of delta d. The delta d part that got reduced it. Now I am using a jack. When I use the jack, what happens? The stress is applied stresses. See here, the stress is decreasing because you made a whole kind of thing which releases the pressure, right? So due to release of the pressure, the applied pressure it's get decreasing, and the distance is also between the two pins, right? That gets reduced. This diagram indicates that during slotting phase. Okay, and while jacking, nothing but when you are applying the hydraulic pressure through the what you call the flat jack. Okay, what happens now? Again, the stress is increasing. The distance between them is also increasing. This diagram basically predicts, or it basically what you call the it indicates how exactly the stress restoration takes place using flat jack method. So this is the kind of slotting. During slotting means while vertical driving the slot, how exactly the pressure applied force and the distance is going to reduce. And during jacking, nothing but while applying the hydraulic pressure, during hydraulic pressure, how exactly the stress and the corresponding distance will be increasing. So this diagram depicts that. Next one, pin separation. During excavation time, the separation between the pins, right? Initially it was 0, right? When I made a slot, it's get reduced. Okay, this period is called the excavation time. Next, if I jacking means during this time I am applying a hydraulic pressure, right? So I am applying hydraulic pressure now. It is moving, right? Because distance has to increase. So due to slot, the distance got, the pin separation distance got decreased, and this duration is called the excavation time. Next one, this duration is called the pressure, flat jack pressure time. So whenever you are start applying the pressure, right? It's keep on increasing, and it reaches the distance, pin separation reaches its original point. So this is what exactly stress restoration. So these two diagrams basically depicts how exactly the internal operation or the principle of working of the flat jack method of in-situ stress measurement. Okay, now what are the disadvantages of flat jack method? So the major disadvantage with the system with this flat jack method is that the necessary minimum number 6 tests at a different orientation has to be conducted at 6 different locations, because in order to measure exact value of in-situ stress, it is necessary, like we require minimum of how many setups? 6 setups we require. Okay, this is very important from the examination point of view. Have to be conducted at 6 different locations, and is therefore necessary to distribute these around the boundary walls of the excavation. Okay, next, it is all means in a single setup we cannot get all the values. Next, it is also important to note that the excavation from the test were made will disturb the because you made an excavation, right? It will disturb the pre-existing state of stresses, because you will be carrying out the experiment. that might disturb the what you call the you carried your experiment, you have taken the readings and everything, and you came out. But what happens? Earlier it was the in situ condition, but you carried out your experimental activity there, and which made some kind of disturbance in that, right? So it is also important to note that the excavation from which the tests were made will disturb the pre-existing stress state. It will disturb that, and also the new redistribution of stresses should be accounted for. We need to take that also into account. Just like that, left and right, we cannot go and dig the what you call the slots and keep on measuring it. That might cause what you call some kind of disturbances while carrying out the actual mining. So this is another disadvantage of using flat jack. Next one, the overcoring principle or overcoring technique. Stress relief method. This earlier one is called stress restoration method, and the second method is known as stress relief technique. Okay. So now let us discuss how exactly this stress relief technique work. Okay, principle. I'll explain this better. I'll explain this with the help of this diagram. That makes my job simple. Yeah. So these are the different activities that will be carrying out. Will be carrying out in order to measure the institute stress. This is also known as overcoring technique or stress relief method. Okay. See, in this case, first a hole of larger diameter, which is of NX size, is being made. Right. Second one is what you call a pilot hole is being drilled into this. This is called pilot hole. Okay. Next, what are the deformation gauge that will be using it, right? That is being placed into the what you call pilot hole into this. So this is step one, and the step two is what this one pilot hole is drilled, and in that what we'll be doing is the deformation gauge will be placed. Next, the drilling of what you call, because this is what you call the rotary drilling, right? Hollow hole rotary drilling. So NX core, the larger hole diameter, right? The larger one, right? That will be further carried out again, the whole of NX size. So which will make some kind of what overcoring kind of thing. Okay, look at here. Let me draw some diagram. That's better. Look at. Let us say this is what the whole of it. This is what the whole I got it. Okay, this is much better. Yep. Look at here. So this is of the hole of larger diameter, the outer one, and initially I made a hole which is of NX size, larger diameter, which is of what NX size. Okay, this is what it is. Next, what I did is inside this, after making this one, I have drilled a pilot hole which is of smaller size, which is of smaller size, which is around 38 mm diameter. Okay, I have made this opening. This we need to drill it. Then we need to insert what we call the corresponding borehole deformation gauge into this one. Deformation gauge into this one. Okay. Then we need to continue drilling of the larger diameter hole. That's nothing but what the initial hole that we made, right? So it will become what some kind of overcoring because we are drilling on top of this. So it's going to be sorry, I'm not getting it right away. But it will form some kind of what overcoring kind of thing. So this is what it is. So it is making this one, right? Now what happens, right? Initial reading, I have kept this and I have taken the reading. Now what happens? Due to this overcoring, there will be a what? Release of stress, right? So there will be release of stress. Initially I have tightened this. Suddenly there will be a change in its reading of this deformation gauge, right? Because there will be, due to overcoring of this, there will be stress release. So there will be a changing reading, right? So whatever the changing reading that we will be getting in the deformation gauge, which is a measure of the in-situ stress. That is why it is called stress relief method. That's why it is called stress relief method. I'll repeat it once again. Let us see in this method. This is also another method of in-situ stress measurement. Okay, in this method, a larger borehole of size, how much? Nx size is being drilled for initially. Then after that, a pilot hole having a smaller diameter is drilled, like after drilling the larger diameter hole. This is a pilot hole. Okay, inside the pilot hole, what it, the device used, which is used to measure the deformation, right? Those sensor kind of devices will be placed inside this pilot hole. Next, we'll continue drilling of the larger diameter hole, which will become some kind of overcoring on top of the smaller diameter hole, right? So this is what the overcoring. So initially we have measured this reading. Initially we have measured the reading. We have tightened this, and we have measured the reading. Then what happens? Due to overcoring, there will be a release of stress. There is a release of stress. So due to release of that, there will be some change in the reading of the what are the deformation that we placed inside the pilot. So the difference between the readings that we'll be getting in the what you call the borehole deformation gauge, which is a measure of the incident stress that is acting on the face. So this is how it works. Hope it's very clear. Let me move on. Okay, okay. Stress relief technique or overcoring method. Principle. Rock elements containing the strain measuring device is relieved from the stress imposed. Okay, because see here, because we are separating it out, that particular part. Initially we drill a larger diameter hole. Okay, that portion got separated. Then we drill a pilot hole and inserted the what you call the corresponding deformation into that, and then we drill an overcoring borehole on top of that. Okay, which releases the stress. That's nothing but that particular portion where you will be measuring gets completely separated out because we have detached it by using overcoring. So the rock element containing the strain measuring device is relieved from the stress imposed by the surrounding rock, right? Because it gets relieved, and the resulting strains are measured with the help of the with the help in determination of with the help of determination of stresses known by stress strain relation. So we'll be drawing the stress relation of exactly those values, and based on that will be this. Okay, now what are the equipments that we'll be using? Electrical strain gauges, borehole deformation meter, borehole inclusion stress meter, borehole strain gauges. These are the different devices that we'll be using to measure this relief. What are the stress that got relieved? Okay, due to overcoring technique. Okay, procedure. The main idea behind the relief method is to isolate because overcoring it. So what are the surrounding rock pressure that was earlier acting on it? It gets separated completely, right? So the main idea behind the relief method is to isolate the partially or wholly a rock sample from the stress field that surrounds it, and to monitor the response. Look at here. Okay. Next, as such, the stresses are not related to applied pressures, such as hydraulic tests, because here we are not applying any hydraulic pressure or anything, right? Instead, stresses are inferred from the strain. We are measuring from the strains generated by the relief, because unloading process, and measured directly on the rock associated with the relief process. Because as we discussed in the earlier method, like flat jack method, right? There we are applying the hydraulic pressure. Here is nothing like, we are not applying any kind of what you call the external pressures. Or all we are doing is what? We are relieving the pressure, whatever the pressure that was acting, and that deformation that we will be getting after relieving of that particular stress. Okay, that is directly is being measured in the field. Okay, so that's what exactly. As such, stresses are not related to applied pressures, such as with the hydraulic test. Instead, the stresses are inferred from the strains generated by relief process and measured directly on the rock associated with the relief process. So overcoring methods are by far most commonly used relief method. So one of the overcoring relief method is what? Overcoring method. So in overcoring method, see, as I said, right, this we discussed like few minutes back. This I already explained. First, a large diameter borehole is drilled, because generally it would be of what? In exercise or even more than that. So between 60 to 220 mm to a sufficiently larger diameter, so that stresses get affected due to excavation can be neglected. So a larger diameter hole, that will be what you call that we need to make first initially. Next, second, a small pilot hole, 30 mm is drilled. Okay, so the measuring device is then inserted and fastened into the, it has to be grouted into the, or it has to be fixed into the, not grouted, it has to be fixed into the pilot. Okay, so first larger diameter, second one is the pilot hole. Thirdly, the larger diameter hole is resumed because we need to make an ore coring, right? So earlier, what was the larger diameter we have drilled and we stopped it. Now we'll be continuing the drilling of that drilling operation. So thirdly, the larger diameter hole is resumed. Okay, relieving stresses and strains in the hollow rock cylinder that is formed. Changes in strain are recorded with the instrument devices as a ore coring proceeds past the plane of measurement. Okay, following the ore, so once you have done that, following the ore coring, the recovered ore core containing the instrument device is then tested in a biaxial chamber to determine the elastic, what are the core that you will be getting, right? That will be tested in the laboratory to further determine its elastic properties of the rubber. This is an extension to that. Okay. So this is how it is, larger borehole, and larger borehole followed by a small diameter, 30 mm diameter pilot hole. In that again, what you call the deformation gauge is placed. Now the continuation of the larger diameter hole with over coring of the pilot hole over the, what you call the pilot hole is being carried out. And again, what are the due to relief of the stress, right? Stress acting on this one, right? There will be a change in its change in the values of the strain gauges that were kept. So those values are measure of the instance stresses that are acting in the. Okay, that is about the second method, ore coring technique. Then the third method is hydraulic fracturing method. Okay, so it is used to measure the institutive stress of stress at a greater depth. Okay, if some because generally these kind of questions you might come across in the entrance examination, it will be asking. Let's say the deposit is present at a very greater depth, and you are asked to find out determine its value of its institutive stresses at different locations. So for that purpose, we'll be using hydraulic fracture technique. Okay. It requires single instrument setup. How many instrument setups? Single instrument setup to measure institutive stresses. Okay. Next, the hydraulic fracturing method involves the pressuring of borehole interval. Typically, what we'll drill from, say, anyway, in the next slide, I will be discussing that. There is a long borehole that will be drilled from the surface up to the, which will be touching the location where we will be, we need to carry out the institutive stress measurement. Okay. So those boreholes are again, in that again, we need to segment them, or we need to separate them at an interval of 1 meter long. Okay. And those portion of the borehole is being isolated using what? Straddle packets. These are called the pressure packets. Okay. The isolated zones is pressurized by water until the fracture occurs in the rock. Look at here. This is what the set. So a borehole is being drilled from this one, and what are the portion where you wanted measure this one? The what you call the hydraulic. What was that? Hydraulic straddle packets. Okay, those packets were placed at this location, so they are isolated. This one. Now hydraulic fluid is being supplied at a very high pressure. Okay, what happened, right? What are the straddle point that your packets you have? Okay, due to hyper pressure, whatever it generates, it will vertical expands and it will exert some kind of cracks here. Look at here, this is how it is. It will generate some kind of cracks like this. Like this, it develops some kind of cracks, surrounding cracks. So the pressure at which, okay, in the pockets, the hydraulic pressure in the pocket at which there will be a development of cracks in the surrounding rock. How exactly, how like the pressure got developed and cracks are developed? Because up to certain extent, there will be an increase in pressure. Then once the cracks were developed, the pressure get decreased. So the pressure point at which it reaches the maximum point, and where there is a development of cracks, okay, that is a measure of institutive stresses. So this is known as the hydraulic fracturing technique. So with this, okay, with this we'll be completing the institutive methods of stress measurement, guys. Okay, Next, the deformation measurement. Those the topic like what do you call the borehole deform. This one, remote convergence record, telltale borehole extension meter. Like what are the deformation measurement devices that I'll be covering as part of next video lecture. Thank you. Thank you.